Ever feel like those behind-the-scenes folks, they never really get enough credit? Like, they're essential, right?
Yeah.
But they don't always make the headlines.
Right. Right.
Well, today's deep dive is all about them.
Okay.
We're tackling a critical chapter in FM 390, Enabling Operations.
Right.
Because it's all about those actions, those crucial actions that really set the stage
Yeah.
for any successful mission, right?
Set the groundwork.
It is. It's the groundwork.
Yeah.
It's the stuff that often gets overlooked,
Absolutely.
but is absolutely essential for victory.
It's like the difference between just,
Okay.
showing up to a firefight and actually like
Right.
shaping the battlefield to your advantage.
Precisely. We're talking intelligence gathering, troop movements,
Yeah.
maintaining security, all
Yeah.
those things that allow commanders to maneuver effectively
Right.
and achieve their objectives.
Yep.
So today we're going deep on 5 key operations: reconnaissance,
Okay.
security operations, troop movement, relief in place, and passage of lines.
The big ones.
Think of it this way. These are the tools
Yeah.
that transform a good unit into a truly great one.
And what's fascinating is how these concepts, while seemingly distinct, right,
Yeah.
they're deeply intertwined.
Right.
Like mastering one without understanding the others.
Yeah.
It's like trying to conduct an orchestra when you only know how to play, like
Wow.
one instrument.
Okay, so let's unpack this orchestra then.
Okay.
Starting with reconnaissance.
Right.
And, I think most soldiers, they get the basic idea of scouting, right?
Yeah.
But FM 390, it takes it to a whole other level.
Absolutely.
It does, doesn't it?
It's about so much more than just
Yeah.
sending out a few soldiers to just look around.
Oh, right.
It's about building a comprehensive understanding of the battlefield,
Okay.
constantly gathering information, analyzing that information to
Right.
make informed decisions.
So if basic scouting is like, I don't know, like tuning an instrument,
Yeah.
what makes the FM 390 approach to reconnaissance more like conducting a symphony?
It's the emphasis on continuous
Okay.
objective-driven reconnaissance.
Okay.
So the information battlefield, it's never static, right?
Right.
Enemy forces are moving, weather changes, civilian patterns shift.
Sure.
So a single patrol might give you a snapshot,
Okay.
but true reconnaissance requires that constant vigilance,
Yeah.
always adapting your information gathering to this
Right.
evolving situation.
And that makes you think twice about the importance of speed, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because the faster you can get that information
Yeah.
back to the decision makers,
Yep.
the more relevant, the more impactful it's going to be.
Exactly. And it's not even just about speed, though. It's about accuracy.
Sure.
And it's about relevance.
Right.
That's why FM 390 stresses the importance of clearly defined objectives.
Yeah.
Before you send out a patrol,
Right.
you need to know what you're looking for. You need to know what information is critical for the commander's decision-making process.
Right. You need to know what you're looking for before you go looking for it.
Exactly.
Right.
Otherwise, you risk overwhelming them with irrelevant data.
Right.
Or even worse, missing those crucial details.
Right. That could swing the mission one way or the other.
Exactly.
And this is where I think the aha moment hits for me.
Okay.
Because we often think of reconnaissance as the job of specialized units.
Right.
But FM 390, it makes it very clear.
Yeah.
It's everyone's responsibility.
That's a crucial point.
Isn't it?
Every soldier, regardless of MOS, has a role to play.
So it's not just the scouts.
No.
It's the mechanic who notices a change in vehicle tracks.
Yep.
The medic who overhears a conversation,
Right.
maybe at a village.
Yeah.
Well, even the cook who spots an unusual bird formation.
Oh,
All of that,
all of it.
when it's channeled back up,
Yes.
can contribute to a more complete picture
Absolutely.
of the enemy and the operational environment.
It all matters.
Powerful reminder that everyone has a role to play.
For sure.
Now let's shift gears a little bit
Okay.
from gathering information
Yeah.
to protecting our own forces.
Okay. Yep.
And that's where security operations come in. Right?
Exactly. And I think it's important to highlight that security operations are about more than just defense, right?
Okay.
It's not just building a bunker and waiting for the enemy to attack.
Yeah.
It's about actively shaping the battlefield.
Okay.
It's about dictating the terms of engagement
Right.
and denying the enemy that element of surprise.
I like that. Taking the initiative, dictating the terms.
Yeah.
So how does FM 390 help us to kind of understand the different flavors of security operations?
So it breaks it down into 4 main types: area security,
Okay.
cover, guard, and screen.
Right.
Each one serves a different purpose
Right.
and requires a different level of combat power.
Sure.
And often they actually work in concert to create these overlapping layers of protection.
Okay, so let's picture a scenario then. we've got a platoon.
Right.
They're tasked with establishing a forward operating base.
Okay.
What kind of security operations would they be looking at?
So in that case, area security is going to be paramount.
Okay.
So think about, establishing that perimeter around your position.
Right.
You're controlling key terrain features.
Yeah.
Conducting those regular patrols.
Right.
Essentially creating a safe zone for your forces to operate from.
Right. You're building your own little bubble.
Exactly. But it's also not just about keeping the enemy out.
Okay.
It's about understanding the human terrain as well.
Right. Yeah.
So, are there local villagers who might provide information?
No.
Are there smuggling routes that could be used for infiltration?
Right.
Area security requires that holistic approach.
It's about understanding the environment.
Yeah.
Both physical and human.
Absolutely.
Now, what about cover?
Okay.
That seems like a more specialized type of security operation.
You're right. Cover is a bit more focused and often involves a higher level of risk.
Right.
So, imagine you need to buy time for your main force
Right.
to withdraw from a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
Or to allow them to reposition for a counterattack.
Right.
A cover force would be tasked with engaging and delaying the enemy,
Okay.
inflicting maximum damage, disrupting their timetable,
Right.
even if it means putting themselves in harm's way.
That sounds like a tough assignment.
It definitely can be.
It does.
Yeah.
And where does guard fit into this mix?
So a guard force, they're more directly attached to the main body,
Okay.
providing that close-in protection and early warning.
Okay.
They're like the bodyguards of the battlefield, constantly vigilant
Right.
and ready to respond to immediate threats.
Okay.
Their primary job isn't necessarily to, defeat the enemy outright,
Right.
but it's to buy time
Sure.
for the main force to react effectively.
So while the cover force might be out there delaying a larger enemy advance, the guard force is more about those close-in engagements,
Exactly.
just making sure that the main body can function
Yep.
without being surprised.
You got it. And then finally, we have the scream,
Okay.
which is all about early warning
All right.
and operating with stealth.
Okay.
So imagine a small,
Yeah.
highly mobile unit,
Okay.
skilled in reconnaissance, skilled in camouflage.
Okay.
They're operating far forward of the main body.
Oh.
They're the eyes and ears of the force,
Right.
observing, reporting enemy activity,
Okay.
but without getting bogged down in direct combat.
Right. So they're providing that critical early warning,
Exactly.
allowing the commander to make informed decisions about positioning,
Absolutely.
about maneuver.
Yeah.
So all of these different types of security operations,
Yeah.
from area security to screening,
Right.
it's like they create these concentric rings of protection
Exactly.
around the main force.
It's a layered defense for sure.
Yeah.
But it's also about proactive defense. And that's where those 5 fundamental principles outlined in FM 390 really come into play.
Right, because just like with reconnaissance,
Yeah.
we said there were some key takeaways for effective security operations.
Early warning is paramount. Obviously,
Definitely.
you don't want to be caught off guard,
Right.
but then you need the ability to react quickly and decisively to any threat.
Right. And part of that is knowing
Yes.
your sector of responsibility,
Yeah.
knowing the terrain, knowing the likely avenues of approach.
Absolutely. And of course, just like we discussed with reconnaissance,
Right.
that continuous information gathering is key.
Yeah.
You can never let your guard down.
Right.
You can never assume you know everything that's happening around you.
All of that makes perfect sense. But there's one principle I find particularly intriguing:
Okay.
maintaining enemy contact.
Yes.
Why is that so important for a security force?
That's a good question.
It seems counterintuitive
It does, doesn't it?
on the surface.
It's about situational awareness. Okay.
And it's about denying the enemy freedom of maneuver.
Okay.
You never want to be reacting blindly to the enemy's actions.
Right.
So by maintaining some level of contact,
Okay.
whether that's through patrols, observation posts, even just listening posts,
Right.
you gain valuable intelligence.
Sure.
You get a feel for their patrol patterns, their equipment, their morale.
You're getting a sense of what they're doing, what they're capable of.
Exactly. And it allows you to anticipate threats, respond proactively,
Okay.
rather than just playing catch-up.
So you're not necessarily looking for a fight, but you're also not shying away from those limited engagements that can provide valuable information.
Exactly. And that takes us back to the idea that security operations, they are everyone's responsibility.
Because whether you're pulling guard duty or you're analyzing drone footage
Yeah.
or even just talking to local villagers,
Right.
You are contributing to that 360-degree security posture
Absolutely.
that keeps the entire unit safe.
It's a team effort.
It is. It is.
Speaking of keeping things moving,
Okay.
I think it's time we talk about troop movement.
Right.
We've got eyes on the enemy.
Yeah.
We have a plan to protect our forces.
Right.
But how do we actually get those forces where they need to be?
Yep.
When they need to be there?
Right.
And that's where troop movement comes into play.
Precisely. And this is an area where FM 390 goes beyond just the obvious.
Okay.
You know, we often think of troop movement as purely logistical.
Right. Just getting people from A to B.
Exactly. Getting units from point A to point B.
Right.
But it's so much more than that.
Right.
The manual really emphasizes how troop movement directly impacts a unit's combat effectiveness.
It's not just about getting there. It's about getting there ready to fight.
Exactly. Think about it. A unit that arrives at its destination exhausted,
Yeah, disorganized.
disorganized, their equipment scattered,
Right.
they're going to be at a severe disadvantage even if they have superior firepower.
Right. They show up, they're tired, they're not ready to go. That's not a good recipe for success.
Not at all. And that's why FM 390 distinguishes between
Okay.
administrative and tactical movements.
Okay.
They both have their place, but understanding the difference is crucial.
Okay, so walk me through that distinction.
Right.
When would you use one versus the other?
Let's say you're moving a battalion between bases.
Okay.
In a secure area, no imminent threat.
Okay.
That's a prime example of an administrative move.
Right.
The focus is on efficiency, safety,
Right.
minimizing wear and tear on equipment.
Yeah.
It's about getting from point A to point B
Right.
in good order.
In good order, yeah.
However,
Yeah.
imagine a company,
Okay.
they're conducting a tactical road march toward an objective,
Right.
knowing they might encounter enemy contact at any moment.
Right.
That's a completely different ballgame.
That is a different ballgame.
Yeah,
So even if they don't actually engage in combat during that road march,
right.
they're moving with a heightened awareness,
Yeah.
ready to transition to a firefight at a moment's notice.
Exactly. Speed is essential,
Right.
but so is maintaining security,
Yeah.
knowing the route, arriving in a formation that allows for rapid deployment.
It's not just about going fast.
No.
It's about going fast in the right way.
And critically, it's about arriving with the right equipment
Okay.
and supplies ready to go.
So it's like an administrative move is like going for a hike,
Okay.
but a tactical road march is like navigating a minefield.
That's a great analogy.
Both involve movement, but the mindset, the level of
It's
preparation,
completely different
worlds apart.
worlds apart.
So how do commanders then decide on the best method of troop movement?
Yeah.
Because it seems like there's a lot to consider.
You're right. It's a complex calculation.
Yeah.
It factors in the mission,
Okay.
the enemy, the terrain, the available resources.
Right, what time of day it is.
Even the time of day, you're right.
Right.
You need speed.
Yeah.
Helicopters might be the answer. Are you moving through dense jungle?
Yeah.
Foot patrols might be the only option.
Right.
And often it involves a combination of methods,
Yeah.
carefully coordinated to maximize efficiency and security.
Which is where movement control comes in.
Exactly.
Making sure all those different pieces,
Oh, yeah.
all those moving parts are working together.
Movement control is the unsung hero of troop movement.
They really are.
They're the ones coordinating the vehicles, they're planning the routes, they're managing the timings,
Right.
they're ensuring the right units have the right supplies at the right time.
Wow.
It's a logistical ballet.
It is.
And without it, even the best laid plans.
Can fall apart.
Absolutely.
And sometimes those plans require swapping out one unit for another
Right,
in
yeah.
the middle of an operation.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our next enabling operation. Relief in place.
Okay.
Sounds simple on the surface,
It does, doesn't it?
but as we've learned with everything else today, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
You're telling the truth. It's a delicate dance, really. It is a delicate dance. You're trying to swap out one unit for another,
Yeah.
often in a combat zone, right?
Right.
Without the enemy noticing
Right.
or exploiting any gaps in your defenses.
It's like trying to change the tires on a car while it's still moving.
That's a great analogy.
It is, isn't it?
And just like changing tires on a moving car.
Yeah.
Timing and coordination.
Yeah.
Absolutely crucial.
Right.
You need to consider the enemy situation, the terrain, the capabilities of both units involved,
Right.
and even the psychological impact on the soldiers being relieved.
Oh, of course.
You know, if one unit's completely exhausted after days of constant fighting,
Right.
and the relieving unit, they aren't fully briefed on the tactical situation,
Yeah.
That's a recipe for disaster.
And I imagine there's a big difference, too,
Oh, yeah.
between a planned relief
Right.
and one that happens,
Oh, absolutely.
kind of under fire.
The
Right.
manual distinguishes between what it calls deliberate and hasty reliefs. Okay.
So undeliberate relief, this is like a well-choreographed ballet.
Okay.
It's planned in detail,
Right.
often with rehearsals, and it's executed when there's, minimal enemy pressure.
So everybody knows their roles,
Exactly.
their timings, their objectives.
Yep.
It's about as smooth and seamless as you could hope for.
As best you can get it.
But what about those situations where you don't have the luxury of time?
Right.
Where things are happening
Yeah.
much more quickly.
That's where the hasty relief comes in.
Okay.
And it's less about choreography
Right.
and more about improvisation.
Sure.
You're adapting to a fluid situation,
Right.
often under pressure,
Yeah.
and speed is paramount.
Right. It's just about getting the outgoing unit out of harm's way
Exactly.
as quickly as possible.
As safely as possible as well.
Right, of course.
But, yeah.
So let's say we are looking at a deliberate relief.
Okay.
What are some of the options
Yeah.
the commanders have for actually executing that handover?
So FM 390 outlines 3 main types.
Okay. Sequential, simultaneous, and staggered.
Okay.
And each one has its advantages and disadvantages
Yeah.
depending on the tactical situation, right?
Right.
So, imagine you're responsible for a long defensive line.
Okay.
You need to relieve the company holding that line.
Okay.
A sequential relief would involve relieving each platoon one after the other
Okay.
from one end of the line to the other.
So it's methodical.
Very much so.
You're minimizing confusion.
You're
Trying.
you're reducing the chance of creating a gap in your defenses.
Exactly.
But it's also the slowest.
It is going to be the slowest.
Right.
And that's where the simultaneous relief comes in.
Okay.
As the name suggests, every unit's relieved at the same time.
So the new guys literally step into the shoes
They step right in.
of the outgoing unit.
It's much faster,
Yeah.
which can be crucial if the enemy's, about to launch an attack.
Right.
But it also requires a higher degree of coordination.
Oh, I bet. You don't want to end up with units looking for their positions while they're under fire.
Yeah, that's not a good situation to be in.
Yo, not at all.
And then staggered, I'm guessing that's kind of a hybrid approach.
You got it. Staggered relief gives commanders more flexibility.
Okay.
Instead of being tied to,
Yeah,
geography or a strict timeline,
right.
they can relieve units in a sequence that makes sense tactically.
Right,
Maybe they need to reinforce a certain section of the line first.
right.
Maybe they need to pull out a unit that's, running low on ammunition.
Sure.
Staggered reliefs allow for that kind of adaptability.
There are a lot of factors to consider.
A lot of factors.
And through it all,
Yeah,
communication is key.
absolutely.
Making sure that everybody knows who's responsible for what
Yep.
and when.
You said a successful relief in place, whether it's deliberate or hasty, hinges on clear and constant communication.
Between the units involved, the higher headquarters, any supporting elements.
Artillery, air support, anybody.
You don't want to end up in a situation where the incoming unit thinks they're relieving one position,
Right.
while the outgoing unit thinks they're holding a different one.
That's how you get friendly fire incidents.
Especially if the enemy decides to probe your defenses right at that moment.
Oh, absolutely.
That is not when you want to figure out.
About the time.
Yeah, those are 2 different things. And that actually highlights a key point from FM 390.
Okay.
The importance of maintaining combat effectiveness
Right.
throughout the entire relief process.
Yes.
Even though you're swapping out units,
Yeah.
the mission hasn't changed.
The mission continues.
It does.
You can't afford to have a lull in your defenses
Mhm.
or a drop-off in your offensive capabilities, even for a few minutes.
So those rehearsals,
Yeah.
the clear communication,
Eh.
a thorough understanding of the tactical situation,
All of it.
that's essential for a successful relief in place.
It really highlights how these enabling operations,
Yeah.
while often happening in the background,
They're just as crucial to mission success
right.
as those more, direct combat operations,
Yeah.
like the maneuver stuff.
They may not be the main show, but they are critical for the main show to continue.
Exactly.
And speaking of navigating complex battlefield situations, our final enabling operation passage of lines.
This one really puts those coordination and communication skills to the test.
I bet it does. You've got friendly forces all intermingled on the battlefield,
Yeah.
potentially under fire,
Right.
and one unit needs to move through the other unit's position
Yeah.
without causing chaos or, even worse, friendly fire incidents.
Yeah, you're essentially trying to, untangle a knot
Right.
while people are shooting at you.
Yeah, exactly.
Not ideal.
Not ideal at all.
It's a high-risk maneuver,
It is.
which is why it requires meticulous planning
Sure.
and
Yep.
clear communication
Yeah.
to be successful.
So in simple terms,
Yeah.
when we say passage of lines,
Okay.
what exactly are we talking about? It's when one unit moves through the combat positions of another unit.
Okay.
So that could be moving forward toward the enemy,
Right.
or it could be moving rearward away from the enemy.
And why would a commander choose to do this?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems inherently risky.
It definitely has its challenges,
It does.
but it can be a necessary maneuver
Okay.
to maintain offensive momentum,
Okay.
maybe strengthen defenses,
Okay.
or reposition forces for a counterattack.
So give me an example of when that might be necessary.
Let's say you have a fresh battalion
Okay.
that's been held in reserve.
Okay.
The enemy's been pounding your frontline units.
Right.
You need to launch a counterattack instead of sending that fresh battalion on a long flanking maneuver, which takes time,
Right.
might alert the enemy.
Yeah.
You might decide to have them pass through the lines of the defending unit
Okay.
right at the point of attack.
So it's about speed. It's about surprise.
Exactly.
And it's about maximizing your combat power at the decisive point.
That's what it's all about.
Right where you need it, when you need it.
When you need it.
Now, FM 390 differentiates between a forward passage of lines
Yes.
and a rearward passage. What's the key difference?
So a forward passage, as we just discussed,
Yeah.
that's when a unit is moving toward the enemy.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
A rearward passage is when a unit needs to extract through another unit's lines,
Okay.
maybe to consolidate their forces,
Okay.
maybe to resupply,
Right.
or to avoid being overrun.
Okay.
So imagine a platoon that's been defending a forward observation post.
Okay.
They've accomplished their mission,
Right.
but they're low on ammo, they're taking heavy casualties.
Yeah.
A rearward passage of lines, carefully coordinated with the unit behind them,
Yeah.
allows them to withdraw safely
Okay.
without exposing themselves to unnecessary risk.
So it makes sense that you'd want to distinguish between those two.
Right.
Just for clarity's sake.
Absolutely, just so everybody's clear on which way we're going.
Exactly. What are we trying to do here?
That's it.
What are some of the other key things to keep in mind when we're planning a passage of lines?
One of the most important is what we call the transfer of responsibility.
Oh,
Right? At some point during the passage, usually when about 2/3 of the passing force has moved through
Okay.
command and control of that area,
Yeah.
shifts from one unit to another.
So a literal passing of the baton.
A literal passing of the baton.
And that handover has to be crystal clear
Absolutely.
to avoid any confusion.
Exactly.
Who's calling for fire support?
Yep.
Who's engaging which targets?
Right.
Who's responsible for that piece of terrain?
All those questions need to be answered before the passage begins.
It sounds like more than any other enabling operation,
It really does.
passage of lines requires that next level communication,
Absolutely.
that next level coordination.
You've got to be on top of your game for
Yeah.
this one.
You do.
Which is why FM 390 emphasizes the importance of rehearsals, clear signals, a shared understanding of the tactical situation.
Everybody's got to be on the same page
They gotta be.
because any hesitation, any
Yeah.
confusion
The uncertainty.
can have deadly consequences.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground
We have.
from reconnaissance to the complexities of passage of lines.
The whole gamut.
What's amazing to me
Yeah.
is how these operations, they're all interconnected.
They are. They all play a crucial role in creating those conditions for success on the battlefield.
And that interconnectedness is what we're going to explore further as we move into the final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
It's like what we were saying earlier about an orchestra.
Exactly. Each enabling operation is like a different section of the orchestra.
Right.
Reconnaissance is your woodwinds,
Okay.
right? They're providing those early flourishes of information, kind of setting the scene.
Okay.
Security operations, that's your brass section,
Yes.
powerful and ready to respond when needed.
Right.
Troop movement, that's your percussion section. Setting the tempo and driving the action forward.
And just like in an orchestra, it's the conductor,
Yep.
the commander,
Yeah.
who brings all those elements together.
Precisely.
Right.
The commander takes the information gathered through reconnaissance,
Right.
uses security operations to shape the battlefield,
Okay.
and then employs troop movement
Yeah.
to position their forces for maximum effect.
To really make it all come together.
Exactly.
And let's not forget those other two instruments in the orchestra,
Yeah.
relief in place and passage of lines.
Right. Right. Those are essential for maintaining the tempo,
Yeah.
ensuring the orchestra can keep playing even when things get really intense.
Yeah, when the music really starts pumping.
Exactly.
So think about like a lengthy operation, days, maybe even weeks of constant pressure.
Right.
Relief in place ensures that you're rotating fresh units into the fight,
Keeping them fresh.
maintaining combat power without losing that momentum.
Yeah, it's like swapping out one musician for a break while the music keeps going.
Right, you don't want to have to stop the whole show just because somebody needs a bio break.
Exactly.
Got to keep that music going.
And then you have passage of lines,
Yeah.
which is like bringing in a guest soloist
Okay.
to really elevate the performance.
I like that. I like that.
It requires an even higher degree of coordination and trust.
Yeah, you got to really be tight with your team.
But when it's executed properly,
Yeah,
it can be a game changer.
right, because now you're bringing in like,
It allows you to insert fresh forces at a critical moment.
right,
You can exploit an enemy weakness
okay.
or reinforce a beleaguered unit.
So these 5 enabling operations, as we've seen, distinct in their execution,
They are,
but deeply interconnected.
they're not just tasks on a checklist.
Right.
They're principles that underpin every successful military operation.
Every single one.
That's why FM 390 stresses understanding these principles
At every level.
at every level of command.
Because it's not just the officers who need to worry about this stuff.
Every soldier on the battlefield needs to understand how their individual actions contribute to that bigger picture.
So whether you're a private, pulling security, on a patrol, or a colonel, planning a major offensive,
Doesn't matter.
those core principles, reconnaissance, security, troop movement, relief in place, passage of lines,
They all matter.
they remain constant.
They're the fundamental building blocks of success.
And just like a musician who practices their scales, their arpeggios,
Right.
mastering these enabling operations
Takes time,
takes effort,
effort, dedication.
a commitment to continuous learning.
Always be learning.
Always be learning.
That's it.
So to our listener, the soldier who's been with us on this deep dive into FM 390,
Yeah.
I leave you with this thought.
Okay.
Take what you've learned today and apply it.
Put it into practice.
Think critically about every mission,
Yeah.
every order, every situation.
Absolutely.
Ask yourself, how did these enabling operations come into play here?
Good question.
What can I do within my role to make sure these principles are being implemented effectively?
Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's not just about understanding the doctrine.
Right.
It's about applying that knowledge to the real world
Making those split-second decisions,
in the heat of the moment.
that can mean the difference between victory and defeat.
That's what it all comes down to.
And that, my friends, is the essence of being a soldier.
Until next time,
Stay vigilant
stay adaptable.
and keep those enabling operations running smoothly.
We'll see you next time.